Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Human Intelligent Dialogue. It's a pleasure to come back with you also, whether it's good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you tune in to listen to this dialogue. Welcome back. And today I have the great pleasure of speaking with Mr. Lewis Brown Griggs. Mr. Griggs, who's someone I was using his videos back last century when we were just engaging in a topic that now is known as DE&I. Back then it was human relations, and his videos were about diversity back then, but I used quite a few of them on especially when it came to leadership development. So, Lewis, number one, thank you for coming in and joining us here.
Pleasure. I love this new technology that enables us to connect all over the world.
Yeah, you're so right, Lewis. So, tell me something. Let's for people that don't know who is Lewis Griggs, which for me is kind of funny to put a face with a name type of thing after having used your stuff way back in time, your materials you brought to the table. Tell the audience a little bit about who's Lewis and why should we be listening to Lewis and Edwin here?
Well, based on that question, we should be listening to anybody because we all have amazing stories and amazing learnings, and we're all equal, right? And so the way I was called, depending on how you feel about that word, into this business of cultural diversity and consciousness and leadership was that in this body, this lifetime, I'm a straight white Anglo yuppie wasp with 14 generations since the Mayflower. How's that? And what that means is, instead of bragging about that, that means I was raised in such a caste that you're perfect if you just be this way. And I was able successfully to be that way. And then that's why I was called again in my first near-death experience to answer the question that we all need to answer, which is, what is it, if anything, that keeps you from being, not doing, being all you're capable of being? And that was a great question for me because raised the way I was able with privilege to do whatever I wanted. And I had no idea what the answer was to what do you mean? What keeps me from being all I'm capable of being? And in that conversation, up in the light, when I totaled my automobile and went through the tunnel and discovered I'm in the source of all energy from which we all come. And when we, that soulful energy we all have, land in the only DNA in the history of life on Earth, then we are simultaneously one and uniquely different. I got it. That broke me out of my caste, my consciousness of caste and identity, and I suddenly was so grateful to notice that we are all one and uniquely different simultaneously with no judgment. In fact, valuing the diversity. That was my book and my videos to help other people learn what I needed to learn. I could only teach what I needed to learn. So I'm only an expert in how to uncover my own ignorance and ethnocentrism and be one with anybody. And then value those unique differences that we bring to one another. That's the short story. And that's been my business since the early 80s. And no one else was talking like that then at all. There was nothing more than legal AAEEO compliance, but no heart and soul in it. And even still, in all these 60 years since the 60s and 40 years since I've been doing this work professionally, yes, there's interpersonal behavioral compliance, there's organizational policies and practices, and there's some systemic thinking, but almost no leader has done the interpersonal work to be able to connect at the soul level equally with no power over or under anyone. Yes, we have different tasks, different jobs, but to really see and hear and feel and value somebody else's essence means we have to do it feeling equal with one another.
Interesting.
Those are the key learnings I was lucky to benefit from.
So, Louis, I'm just going to mention one context and then I'll move on to the next question. But as you were speaking, it reminded me of I got into the space in the Air Force. And I went to the most extensive diversity school in the nation, which is right up here at Patrick Air Force Base, which is called DOMI, Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute. And there, all four military, it's a Department of Defense school, still is. All four military branches come together, including the guards and others, come together and spend 4 months kind of looking in the mirror and going, you're going to do this kind of work going forward. And I remember this major, white male major in the military. We had an Army female African American captain. I remember she calling him out for being a white racist, and I think they called her on the side and said, "You can't be doing that stuff." But what eventually in that 4 month time span, because for the Air Force it's a career, for the other branches it's kind of like you do it for a while and then you move back into your specialty. But I remember him saying toward the end of it, "Hey, I came into this space this way, kind of like you were talking, Lewis, how I was, not knowing what I don't know, only knowing what I know. And I'm coming out of it a different person." And I thought that was a powerful takeaway from him. And he was humble enough and shared humility to show that I'm trying to grow, which also I think send a message to the female captain to go, who are you to point fingers at somebody else when we've got our own isms, irrespective of background and so forth. So that and it's interesting you said 40 years because that's how long I've been in this space too. So my next question for you is this. So here we are from the 80s to 2026. Today, what are some of the emerging trends that you're seeing when it comes to human capital and organizational dynamics?
Well, first, I can't resist saying what Malcolm X said when somebody said, "Look at the great progress we've made." And anyone else who's a 60s kids like I and you knows we really started this 60 years ago. And we've made huge progress and nowhere near enough. And Malcolm X said it in one sentence when he said, "Yeah, we've made a lot of progress. The knife used to be a foot deep. Now it's only 6 inches deep." Now, notice in the silence how you take those words in, not in the head, but in the heart. No words should be spoken after that. It should just be felt. Okay, so that's one key. We made a lot of progress and not enough, and now it's been going backwards for the past 10 years, and we all know why. And the truth is, instead of blaming it on one person, it's uncovered the never studied and valued and owned inner racism that started with the slavery, etc. No shame, no blame. Honestly, it may sound weird, but I mean, to really own and recognize our history is very important. And right now, to answer the question, what is happening is not only that fight against knowing our history and learning our oneness for people who want this to be a white nation again. And instead, what is happening right now is a huge conflict, which actually is a very healthy, very uncomfortable, but very healthy way in which we are going to break the conflict into, I hope not a civil war, of course, but I believe into, let's say now 70% feel that we don't like what's going on now. That's about what the polls say. And 30% are still hanging on to having it, they hope the way they wish they could have it. Well, guess what? When 70% of us, whatever our melanin and orientation and language and original culture, body we're in, and politics, okay? We are beginning to realize we are one, and we have to recreate this the way it was intended to be recreated. So there's great news happening, even though you have to be very strong to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem.
Yeah, as you and I watched the halftime show, I think love is stronger than hate. It was the message. And hopefully, to your point, with the 70% that's moving and saying, I don't like what's going on, this is not who we are. I think it sends a powerful message. And we all know that to that 30%, people will resist change for a couple of reasons. They don't understand the why, or they're not sure how it's going to impact them. But it's interesting. One of the things I shared on a recent a talk was, you know, there's a demographic wave happening in this country. Like it or not, it is what it is. And so we are about to become in the early 2040, we're about to become a minority majority nation. And whether we like it or not, that is the demographic that's happening. We have an aging workforce too, multi-generationals. You and I are examples of that. So it's going to happen. So let me ask you this, to your point, based on these trends that you're seeing, based on some of these things that you're seeing, what are some of the solutions you're bringing to bear with some of your clients?
It's been true since it's the way I learned it, that the very first thing that has to happen is to go inside and own one's own inner self. Not only in the body we are each in, but in the learnings we have had, the crises through which we've had our greatest learnings that have helped us learn the most, enhanced our consciousness the best. And when we can do that and then begin to relate to one another, and they don't like it when I say this, but I mean from the boardroom to the bedroom and at the grocery store and with clients and employees and everywhere in between, when we can just relate with every human as simultaneously one and unique. Seriously, that's what's happening and has to happen because people with my DNA call it all white, even though remember, white and black were invented by my forefathers once we were here, right? Because we didn't even think you were white enough, right? And how about Italians even? I mean, really. And the only reason white and black work is because slaves and us. Oh, so, and we the people remember meant then by these conscious people who were way ahead in some ways, even though they also owned their slaves, most of them. But we the people then only meant we, the straight, white, Anglo, all Anglo, male, not female, landowners, and not even our wives or anyone else. Now, the words, however, are so wonderful. They are more and more beginning to be recognized as the words by which we all have the benefit of learning. And when one in my DNA can look around the world, we realize we are the minority. That's right. And you, as you know, are a mix of white and an original native South American in some way. And you might have a piece of so-called black. Who knows? But you might know. But everybody listening and watching knows we're all a mix. And when I say we're all a mix, I go, I'm not as white as the ones up in Norway and Sweden. They had more snow than I did in England. I mean, it's like, and if you believe we all came from Africa and then we changed, we get rid of all this righteousness, of which we're all guilty without shame in a natural tribal way. Because when we live 50 miles away from someone else we'd never met, because we never traveled that far, and we created our own language, we looked at each other when we met and went, "You're not me." And it's natural, especially in the male version of natural. Okay. So that's what we've been through, and we are actually breaking it. And now, one more thing you don't expect I'm going to say, I only learned it recently, is we better get it soon to stop having men kill other men because we think our religion or our melanin deserves us being better, including what's going on today. It's so unnecessary. Uh, and that isn't caused by women, it's caused by men and their control. All right. So we need to own that. And guess what? Why we need to figure it out soon. Because for 80 years, you've all got to watch the documentary now all out called Age of Disclosure. And it's showing what is beginning to come up in the news that for 80 years, we in the US, we in Russia, we in China, all over the world have known that UFOs have crashed. And yes, we even have biological pieces of some of the entities, non-human, whose intelligence and technical advances are so far ahead of ours that we soon better realize we really are worldwide all of one so that we can learn to meet them and instead of kill them too. Yes, we have to be prepared for the one who's going to hurt us. I get it. But we don't lead that way. We have to lead with being able to communicate even with them and realize they are smarter than we are. So
It's
not
almost
everybody's ready to hear that, but that's the truth.
It's almost like I need to bring you into another podcast because I follow some of those stuff, but that's for another conversation. But interesting stuff that you bring up, and I'm with you there. So let me ask you this: as we look at this evolution we've been talking about, speaking of technology, with the future of work, AI, hybrid remote workers, the working, changing workforce psychology, which you heard me speak about, and the whole workforce evolution, with these isms that we all bring, and this evolution that we've brought to the table from generations ago to where we are today. How do you see the future of work evolving? I asked you what advice or solutions you're bringing to bear. So how do you see this moving forward?
Again, my first learning is to start with enhanced consciousness first before I act upon my ignorance. And one of these things we are learning is that there are now four different intelligences with which we need to interact, ideally in integration and integrity. Please feel the difference between those two words, the way we use them, and simultaneously feel that they need to be recognized as having the same source. Okay? Integrity and integrate. Okay. So one of them is human intelligence. Thank you for having this podcast. Another one of them is what some people call natural intelligence. And what they mean by that is the land, the plants, and all. Remember, we are all a system of cells, and all of which are related and connected, including that we're dust to dust and ashes to ashes, the bodies. So who's to say how far ahead we are of the plants having their own intelligence with one another and how they live and how, etc. So there's natural intelligence, human intelligence, artificial intelligence, AI, which is brand new to us, at least this version of it, and cosmic intelligence. Wow, this is a big task. And we have enough intelligence, apparently, to at least understand the difference between those four and to at least feel that, yes, we are constantly dealing with trying to integrate all of them instead of one of them ruling, including AI. It's a great gift. And like every great technology that's been created, it can be used for ill or for evil. And both are already happening right in front of us.
Hmm.
All right. So
Yeah.
that's the best answer. So I don't have the answer for the perfect way to solve it. I just know we can't solve it unless we together understand what I just said, and then not only understand it, but feel it and integrate our own solutions for how to keep us all safe from any one of them ruling over the other with ignorance of the other two or three.
So you started to kind of get into it, so I'll go ahead and ask it because, while some of the listeners might think, well, this kind of sound philosophical and so forth, but in reality, that's kind of where it starts, and then from there, we start to make some actions out of it so that we can
Wow.
evolve and adapt and move forward. So, based on your experience, based on the emerging trends that we've talked about, and some solutions that you're bringing to bear, which I think I heard you say is one, look inside, Mr. Miss Manager, Mr. Miss CEO type of thing. The whole future of work with AI and remote and workforce psychology and so forth, where people are now looking for at work, as you heard me say in my talk, happiness, purpose, things of that nature, which is kind of what you just alluded to with purpose a little while ago. So, what actionable advice would you provide to managers, employees, HR professionals out there as they help their organizations evolve through these changing times?
So we noticed that many of them lay people off right away because they think their jobs are no longer needed because of AI. And instead, what some have been doing is bringing most of those employees back because what they understand is, the gift of AI is none of us needs to go spend hours and days figuring out the answer to the questions we have that is now known. Okay. And so that part of our job now can be done quickly, and we all have access to that. And then we still need the human that AI isn't yet doing perfectly to take the data that comes and the knowledge that comes from AI and realize which pieces of it can apply to the task at hand. And the task at hand could be a corporate one, it could be an action, it could be biological. And I even just took it, I did it now once for my cancer recovery and my COVID recovery and the brain fog and mild impacts that I still have and effects, which are trivial compared to my luck of being alive and breathing. But when I took all this data from AI and said, look, this is what AI says I need to be doing now, and I gave it to my doctors, the ones who saved my life, and they say, Lewis, this is not a human doctor. There's some of this intelligence that is useful. Thank you. I agree with this, this, and this. This, and this are not accurate for you in your body, in your age, and what you went through. So again, that's just an example of how we have to take that intelligence, use it to move forward in ways we never had the ability to move forward before because we were spending all that time gathering that intelligence. So yes, we have access to more knowledge now, but the human interactive being, conscious and sensitive, which has never been enough, needs to be mixed with our doing, our actions, and those actions need to fit systemically, not only within the human body and the land and the corporation or whichever system you're now working on. Because the most important thing I ever learned in my brain, and now I love feeling it, is that every system only works because its parts are different and relating to each other functionally.
Okay.
Every single system, a lake, a human body, a company, a pen, a computer. And when we really get that, that the diverse parts, yes, even the humanly diverse parts, but the diverse parts of every system are the gifts with which, if they relate to one another functionally, enable the entire system to be functional. And
Awesome.
that's true no matter what your job is. And AI is just a piece of it that helps us, but it never can solve that without the human sensitivity mixed with our intelligence. And the trivial way I want you all to notice that is when you can hear or feel Edwin or me or yourself or another reading a script without looking up, you know that one, boring. And how about this? If we're just speaking only from our left frontal lobe and you can understand it, that's an entirely different way of experiencing it than if the person speaking is feeling it and you can feel that they're feeling it. Then you can take it in. Seriously.
Yeah.
So it's really key that we ourselves have to constantly balance our inner being with our doing. Because if we're only doing with no sensitivity, disaster happens. And
Yeah.
if we're only being with no actions, fine, we can sit on top of the mountain and meditate if we want. But that doesn't accomplish some of the things we're trying to do. So we need a better integration of being and doing, almost like the yin yang, you know, concepts that most of us get. The strength of male and the strength of female are different strengths. And together they co-create, not just love,
Yeah.
consciousness, and actions there. Now, yes, that's very philosophical. Doesn't it feel good to get how true those things feel? And doesn't that thereby enable us to take actions that come from the authenticity of our being instead of just data or just left brain or just physical? I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. So let me ask you this, Louis. As we begin to wrap this up, what would be a key takeaway or two you would want the audience to walk away with? You said, I thought you shared some good different insights and perspectives, but at the end of the day, if they were to go, this is one or two things I remember Lewis really said, what would those be as part of the closing of this dialogue?
You know, I can say as I started that the most important thing each of us is able to be and do is to be open enough to try to notice if there's anything, and of course there is, that because we're constantly learning. That's the gift. We never know everything. We're constantly learning, but knowing isn't enough. So, what is it that is keeping us from being all we're capable of being? And don't go outside and say it's your fault, her fault, his fault, the government's fault. Those are true pieces. But within, what is it that keeps us from being all we're capable of being? And for me, it was, oh, I was raised that we're all one under God, but you're special because you're white and you're privileged and this and that. Uh-uh. I had to learn. The biggest learning I had, and this is a better answer maybe than what you're looking for, is notice when doors open and invite you that aren't the doors you thought you had the power to open by yourself. That was a learning I had because I thought I could do whatever I wanted. So when you feel a door open and you don't know the answer to why this is happening or what learning is here, there's some amazing learning here. And yes, if you can be protective enough to notice if this person or this, what's happening here isn't healthy, great. But don't start presuming it is. Start opening, noticing, wow, what is here for me to be with and to do with? And the with is the next key thing. There's nothing any of us has ever done alone without oxygen, without food, without one another. And when we can co-create from the boardroom to the bedroom and at the grocery store and everywhere, we can co-create what works for each and all of us instead of just for the greedy aspect of one. So that's about five answers in one, but they're all connected, they're all related, they're all integrated, and guess what? That's integrity.
That's also authenticity.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, Lewis, obviously, folks out there, I purposely do these for 30 minutes because I know what your time constraints are, and Lewis and I could speak all day on this stuff. So, do follow up with him. You're going to see his contact information at the beginning. You're going to see his contact information at the end. Lewis, is truly a pleasure and an honor for me to actually get the person to get to know the person behind the videos that I used to use way back
Yep.
when you started on this journey, and I was on this journey myself too, and still here we are, many years later, still moving in that journey. So
Every
thank
day.
you. Yeah,
Every day we each get better. Thank you, Edwin.
thank you. I appreciate it. We're glad that you stopped by to visit. We're in the business of helping organizations in the growing era of AI become more HI, and that is become more of a human intelligent workplace. And we do that in a variety of ways. We can do speaking engagements. I can come in and speak to you either at executive retreats, at offsites, keynotes, things of that nature, to kind of share with you some of the trends that are taking place and what the implications may be for your organization. Sort of in a way, put a mirror up to your organization and say, these are the things that are happening. Are you ready for them? Are you doing something about it? So that's just one way. Another way we do some work with organizations is through executive coaching, helping from VPs to frontline supervisors, those to soon to be in supervisory, high potential individuals, help them in their development. Also do leadership and team development work. And along with that, we use instruments to help organizations from a consulting perspective help themselves, whether it's the Human Intelligent Workplace instrument or questionnaire to take a sense of, hey, how are we doing in this space? Also, organizational change readiness questionnaire. Are you ready for the changes? What are you missing based on some of this information? And lastly, we also look at leader behavior effectiveness questionnaires. How well are your leaders doing? How do they assess themselves? And how are the workforce assessing them too, whether it be 360 or others. So we're here to help, particularly in this ongoing changing era that organizations are facing, a time of uncertainty, a time where the workplace or the workforce is expecting different things. So hopefully you'll reach out to us and let us know how we can help you out. You can look at some of our information that we have on our website, some of the various podcasts, some of the articles and videos that I've put out there. And hopefully those will percolate and create some thoughts and reflective moments to think about maybe we need to have a discussion with the human intelligent workplace. Thank you very much.